Hi, everyone. This is Drew Horn from Sumo Logic. Thanks for joining us here today at Illuminate in this fireside chat. Today, we're going to be talking about accelerating software delivery through observability. And we'll hop into some slides and some discussions here to kind of peel the onion away on that topic name here in a minute. But to get started, let me go ahead and introduce our panelists today. So first, I want to hand it over. We'll just go left to right. Clara, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, I'm Clara. I'm the Director of Engineering at Sauce. I lead engineering for the developer experience group, where we are extending our products to cater to developers and to basically build a DevOps test toolchain, so that all our customers can have confidence when they're delivering software.
Great, thanks, Clara. I've actually had the honor of being a longtime SauceLabs user in a previous life. So happy to have you here today, Clara. Thanks for joining. And then Brian, can't say I've done any healthcare performance optimization, so haven't used your platform, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so Brian Veselks, I currently own basically cloud operations and all the good things that come along with that, from helping to build and organize the cloud and structure, and our automation team, which in our world is a lot of our DevOps practices historically. So, helping to facilitate that from CI/CD, from start to end, and helping to facilitate that for development teams.
Great, thanks, Brian. And again, everyone, I'm Drew Horn. I'm a Director of Business Development here at Sumo Logic. So I work with all of our technology partners. Why am I here talking to two developers as someone in business development is a good question. I joined Sumo Logic as the product owner for one of our solutions here down at the bottom, software development optimization, and kind of helped consult with the product team to take that solution to launch last year. So back to my day job, but still here helping out and working with some of our great customers and partners on software development optimization. So let's jump into it today. We have a couple of topics I wanted to walk through. Just wanted to have an open discussion here, right? So earlier, I talked about observability for software delivery, right? So what does that even mean? So I think what we'll do is we'll jump into what that means for each of these different companies, right? So we've got SauceLabs, platforms as a service. We've got Vizient, completely different market vertical in the healthcare. So I think it'll be interesting to have some discussions with these engineering leaders with respect to, how are they, benchmarking and optimizing their software development and delivery process. I want to talk a little bit about, current and future state. What are some of the challenges that the two of you had, in either going through, digital transformation and rolling out a DevOps culture at your organization, or implementing DevOps capabilities to help tackle some of those challenges. Some of the metrics that you're looking at today, at Sumo Logic, we talk about the key four DORA metrics: DevOps, research, and assessment. But want to get your take on that. What are y'all looking at today? How do you think about metrics when it comes to identifying issues in the CI/CD process, in the entire value stream? And then finally, again, since we've got two experts here that are getting their hands dirty and optimizing software delivery, just curious on some of the learnings or some of the recommendations you'd hand over to some of the other folks that are hopping here on the call today. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm just going to hang out on this slide and just kind of jump into a bit of a chat format here. So I think what I'll do to maybe kick it off, Clara, maybe I'll start with you, pop quiz. So value streams, I know that's something that you're really focused on at SauceLabs, and is maybe something you've worked on at prior organizations, and something that you're, again, focused on today in your relatively new role at SauceLabs. So what I'm curious is, what do you see as a value stream, and how are you applying that concept to your product and engineering process?
Yeah, I think the way I see it is that we're trying to visualize the system being kind of the people system and the way we develop software, and try to basically have as much visibility and observability as possible, and trying to link that also to the way that product management starts with ideation and as well as, moving through from ideation to experimentation into the delivery process. And with that, we're looking at some engineering metrics, specifically the DORA metrics, but use one metric at this moment, and that could change over time. But deployment frequency is something that we're trying to improve over time. So yeah.
Yep. I think we'll get into that in a little bit when we talk a little bit about the infrastructure over there at SauceLabs. I think deployment frequency definitely something that makes sense as a focus area for you. Brian, a little bit different, right? So just kind of curious, when you and I got started on, rolling out, measurement of DORA metrics at Vizient, right? The word value stream wasn't even a concept that we were talking about time, a year or so ago. So just curious, like maybe it's not value streams, maybe it's software delivery performance, maybe it's DevOps lifecycle optimization, blah, 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 right? Could just rattle off the buzzwords, but, how does this concept of, trying to build, better software faster map to your engineering processes at Vizient? What are you focused on?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's all about speed and how do we visualize that speed and become as efficient as possible, right? If you can deliver things faster than your competitors, then obviously you have an advantage, right? And you have happy customers, which is the end goal, right? So that's where we get into on that, is trying to how do we get visibility into those areas? And that's where I think some of the DORA metrics are able to take us to that next step. I mean, we're still obviously in the journey. Would I say we have it all? No. We're going through the different phases and kind of adding in each piece. And but that's where the value I think that we're getting and being able to go is just that next natural evolutionary step.
Yeah, and you said journey. I actually have that written down here for my next follow-up question actually for you. So, as the leading healthcare performance improvement company, Vizient has, like, any other organization that wants to survive in today's modern world, embarked on, what people are calling a digital transformation journey, right? In my past role consulting with organizations going through digital transformation, I was working with them to help implement continuous testing in their existing CI/CD pipelines, right, to kind of remove bottlenecks in that validation phase of the value stream. What I'm curious, in talking with all of those companies in the past, everyone is a different challenge for everyone depending on the industry, depending on where the team is, and the company culture. So I'm just curious, what are some of the challenges that your organization has, or even still is, currently facing as part of this effort and journey? So on the challenges side, and then, what DevOps capabilities or processes or teams focus on implementing to improve how they're building and deploying software?
Yeah, so it's definitely multifaceted, to say the least.
Yeah.
So we have a relatively large development team, over, between 300 and 400. And so for us, it's about trying to get, information across a myriad of teams. Obviously, when things are moving, like from an agile perspective, you can't compare a team, right? They're in a single unit. So for us, it's about getting that different visibility, understanding stuff. Like it's that maturity process. When we started out, of course, you move into agile, and goodness, it's hard to believe that agile has been a thing for as long as it has now. But we get into that spot of just, you understand how long does it take to move stuff, or how long does it take to get a user story from point A to point B? Well, that's great. Well, now how do we start figuring out how do we get this out the door? And from our perspective, as we've been maturing, we're moving more to a cloud-enabled architecture and trying to go down those perspectives. So, we're starting to get visibility in, because now we're talking about infrastructure, not just in code. So it's that next kind of level. And so how do we show that is going faster? You're getting the hardware, and I say quote, quote, hardware that you need in a faster space. And so you're wanting to start showing that value that you can get, right? Because it's no longer just a user story as directly, you're trying to show how fast can we get out the door? How fast can we get this into the hands of our customers? And so those are kind of those next things, and probably just our biggest issues, if you will, and they're minor, but it's just getting different teams on board to obviously see that. At the end of the day, the teams just want that visibility, but it's trying to get them, into somewhat of a standardized approach so that they're able to take advantage of it, right? Multiple teams obviously have different wants and needs, so it's trying to figure out where's the best place to give and take to give them what they need and give them the flexibility that they need. And I think that we have started doing some of that with your guys' help, as as we were very customized in our areas of some of the tool sets we used. So
Sure.
some of the things that we saw there.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's a tough balance to strike. You're on the one hand, you want to provide a mental model or a framework that you can scale out at the organization, but on the other hand, you don't want to shove technology down each different team's throat, right?
Right.
Each team should be able to have the ability to pick the tooling in place, for the technology they're building and deploying. If you got a backend team, an iOS team, and an Android team, or a team developing for Apple TV or set-top boxes, or it just goes on and on, right? And so you just have to have that level of flexibility in giving those teams the choice to pick what they'd like to use. So yeah. Clara, similar question to you, but a little bit different given your organization, right? So SauceLabs has a very unique infrastructure given your product offerings for automated testing, right? So you're doing, SauceLabs, allows teams to do testing, automated testing, running on virtual machines using real browsers. You have a real device cloud, a giant farm full of cell phones, mobile phones, it's attached to racks in a data center. You do visual testing based off of screen captures, performance testing. I feel like SauceLabs is buying a company every week. I'm having trouble catching up at this point, actually. So
I think part of the challenges has been really because we had been growing quickly this year, just really consolidating and having a common view across all our teams and product lines, and trying to get that set up a system where leadership can kind of like get signals from the teams about what's going well, what's not going well, and be able to visualize it. And with Sumo Logic, that's part of the tool set that we're using to do that for sure. And some of the challenges that we have is really is beyond just delivery. It's like we start with like looking at the whole picture, like how do we do discovery? How do we figure out what opportunities are there that customers, what customer problems are there that we can help with, and then going through an experiment phase, and then when it goes into delivery, of course we're measuring how fast we're delivering. But I guess just from the agile perspective, just breaking things down into smaller pieces to deliver, scoping things, doing incremental development, that's some of the that's the journey that we're on right now, is to work with the teams on how to scope the right things so that we can iterate faster.
Yeah, and then I'm just thinking through in my head. We've had a few acquisitions over here at Sumo Logic as well. Bringing in new teams and organizations. Maybe this is something you're still working through, but like, how do you drive a DevOps culture that can span across these different organizations and help, self-enable teams to drive improvements internally in a way that's cohesive and matches kind of the broader initiative?
Right, you're right. It starts by like getting to know like the new companies and really starting to include them. It really starts from the people perspective and how we organize ourselves. When new companies come in, like where do they put them? In which group do we put them so they're working in the same space? Basically organizing teams and the new company coming in with their teams, organizing them in a way that will help us come up with the architecture that we want, because the systems that gets designed is often, due to like the lines of communications that are open in the teams. And when we set things up in an organization correctly, hopefully we'll get to the architecture that we want.
Yeah, I like that idea. Setting up the organization to drive, product design. So it's an interesting concept. Taking a step back, actually, on Agile, both of y'all kind of brought that up. In Brian, in the past, myself included, we would be using Agile primarily just inspecting or trying to observe our Agile and Scrum processes to define our performance as a team. Is that still the case? Is that still kind of the main focus? Or, if not, leading question, right? How are you thinking about measuring those processes and, the delivery side of the house?
Yeah, I think for us, it's the thing, right? Originally people brought in Agile, right, as a way to help get projects done more efficiently and, regular. Like we've all seen the different metrics out there and the spreadsheets that talked about old school waterfall projects were successful X% of the time, and Agile projects are successful Y, and it's a greater percentage. And so, the big things that we get, of course, with the Agile frameworks is, you're making that work visible. So you're finally understanding what's really going on a daily basis, and you're getting that feedback loop that comes into play. And that's great from a pure, development perspective. I got this user story completed and I got it done, in 3 days. Great, right? But then it's taking us to the next step. It's like, how do we now know? Because, you got it completed. That's wonderful. Was it released? How long did it take you to get that actually out into a customer's hands? And so that's in the next step that I think where, we're trying to go through this effort is starting to put on the next piece of the puzzle. Really understanding how long does it take us to get completely from A to Z, whereas before I think we've been getting half of that visibility. You talk about releasing stuff, in Agile, of course, you want to release more often and get that out there, smaller, bites, similar to what, Clara was mentioning, smaller units, smaller chunks, and breaking those things down better. And it's getting it though into visible perspective so that you can get it and understand, are you really speeding up? Because now we can get into the point we can realize I got all these user stories and I got 50 of them out since the last time. Well, cool. Can I get 55? And you start getting in that, you can track that team better. And then, like you say, it still kind of adheres to the traditional Agile stuff. You don't compare one team to the other, right? Different people, different scenarios, different ways of structure. But you can now start to really, put them against themselves. It's almost gamification, if you will, right? Can you do better? Can you see yourself get stronger here? And so those type of things, I think, are providing a lot of value.
Go ahead, Clara. Yeah.
Sorry. I was just going to add to that. Like what we see is like as teams kind of mature in their agility is that they start expanding their definition of done, right? Like, to go all the way to production. And now, even now as we start thinking beyond that, actually, something we encourage is that when teams to go beyond that, which is to like validate if their expectations in production, like after they've released a feature, did that feature actually have the return that they expect? Did they get the increased usage? Did they get the increased users coming in? And going all the way to validation before as part of definition of done. So we're really looking at it as like not just deliver the feature, but like designing a feature so that we can measure the effect in production. And by doing so, hopefully we're able to confirm like whether that experiment was valid, succeeded or failed. So
Agreed.
No, I'm glad you chimed in, because that I was going to build on top of that and saying that that's that process that you're talking about, combining what's happening in the planning and the work process, with build, test, deployment, validation, that end-to-end measurement of the entire value stream. right? That's the challenge. That's what's hard, right? And so, at least on the Sumo side, we're actually doing this internally in-house as well. We have an initiative to continue to benchmark and optimize our key the 4 key DORA metrics and others. But yeah, it's a challenge, trying to correlate that data, right? So if you think about it, if you want to measure, for example, lead time, you're looking at obtaining data from 2, 3, 4, different tools in the DevOps tool chain that aren't necessarily built to share data. Right. They can emit data about what they're doing. So, having a home to put all of this data in one place, normalize it, do some automated correlation, and generate.
Correlation is key, definitely.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah. And so, to that end, maybe to wrap up on a couple more questions here. Brian, I think I recall you saying, lead time that's probably one of the important metrics that you're focused on, at Vizient. So how are you guys using Sumo to benchmark some of these metrics internally?
So, obviously lead time is probably that big one, because that's the piece we never have seen before. And understanding from ideation to actual deployment. How long does it really take it? Getting in the metrics of, you had an idea, but how long did it take you to actually start on it, right? How long has it just been sitting out there as an idea? So those things are great, and that kind of information. We talk about that flexibility and and whatnot, and the different tools, bringing them together, right? Some of the stuff that we've had and gone through, which has been, which was fun to get in there, right? But like you say, it's bringing those multiple tools together. We used, goodness, it feels like at one point in time, I think we were using each one of the major build systems out there, and multiple locations where we had source code at, and as we're trying to consolidate those things down for our own sanity, and migrating them over to newer tool sets, and having that flexibility where, through you guys at Sumo and helping us work through that, right, and getting those parts integrated together, and still keeping the same visibility, just no matter if the data is in Jenkins, or if it's in Azure DevOps pipelines, or is it in GitHub, et cetera, right? And so helping to link all that back together again and get that view. We were able to, we're getting our development teams to slowly bring it out. I've mentioned, I think, to you in previous conversation, right? We had a dev team that, took a look. They're like, hey, I remember you mentioning this, can we get access? And sure, of course. And they got in there, and a couple of days later, they came back, and it was just a resounding wow. This data is so cool, and it's so valuable for us to understand what's really going on. They'd never seen it in that format before. And actually seeing it in one place, right? Today, they're pulling it from 2 different locations, 3 different locations when they can, which means that they're probably not, right? So making that easy and efficient, they're just like, wow, this is pretty cool. So.
Thanks for that. And I think that's a good example of, look, we're going to put an organizational framework in place. And as part of trying to improve on your software delivery performance, here's some flexible open-ended tooling in place. Here's some sensible defaults, right? So right, our SDO solution, out of the box, you can compute those 4 DORA metrics, but you can send data from any tool. If you're migrating from Jenkins to Azure DevOps, or you're using GitLab end to end, right? Doesn't really matter what data you send into the platform. Just having the ability to choose anything in the DevOps tool put anything into your DevOps tool chain, send it to an analytics platform, right, and normalize that data. It makes it easier to share it to an organization. Say, look, here's a tool. Send anything you want to it, right? But you can still kind of follow the common model of computing these metrics, right? So I like that example of technology complementing the process, right? So
yeah, I just want to say, the common schema really helps, having the flexibility for different tools to plug in, and that's really powerful, because then you're not restricting the teams in using certain things. Of course, there is still a challenge of branching between scaling between like focusing on the team versus seeing the signal across the organization.
Yeah. Great. Well, maybe last question here. Maybe I'll kick it off to you, Claire, and Brian. If you have any insights, feel free to jump in. Just for you got two folks here who are getting their hands dirty. They're in it, right? So, Clara, how would you recommend someone getting started at an organization that's interested in not only improving how they build and deliver software, but also benchmarking it? Like any insights or recommendations based off of your experience so far you'd want to share with the group?
I guess the way we're approaching it is really starting beyond, before delivery and starting at the product side, starting with ideation and discovery, and with the roadmap, providing context for any engineering metrics that we uncover from the team, because teams can be going fast or slow, but they may be slow because the roadmap is not clear, or the backlog is not, or there's too much work coming in and they need help prioritizing. So there could be a lot of reasons for fast or slow, and for that reason we don't just focus on engineering metrics alone. So that's one aspect, and the other aspect is to just realize that teams have different needs and they're at different stages. They may have different, tech stack. Some teams have more tech debt to deal with, and to understand that we can't compare them, but we want to, help them get to the next step, and to give them the visibility to the metrics that they could choose what metrics to work on, and help them with that. So yeah.
I agree. I think, yeah, it's like you say, don't be afraid to take it in chunks, take it in pieces, and slowly work your way up. I mean, like I said, we don't do everything right now. Our incident system is not integrated into this yet because we have to get some other things mature on that area first. And that's fine, right? We still are getting total value from the parts we have connected in. You don't have to have it all to get any value at all. You can take it in chunks. And so break it down to what's most important to you right now and start getting the data there. Start getting it massaged and, managed as necessary, and start getting some value right here, right now.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like going through the, iterations and just, with each iteration, you could decide what's next and just add to it over time.
Agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It's not a developer's primary day job to measure their day job, right? Their day job is to build and deliver software. So taking it in steps. The iterative approach. I like that. And Clara, I also liked your comment on not undervaluing or starting off or digging into that intersection between product and engineering, as opposed to just thinking through the engineering process. So very helpful. Great. Well, that's it. So Clara, Brian, just wanted to again thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. And for everyone else on the call, hope you enjoy the rest of the Illuminate conference and have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.